It's safe to say that former MMA fighter and now comedian Brendan Schaub has had a rough couple of months. This has been a pretty big story that's been going on for a while now, so I'm going to give you guys the rundown of the entire situation and the recent updates. The whole situation really started off with Brendan Schaub accusing fellow comedian Bobby Lee of being behind a harassment campaign that's been against him on the internet for a while now. And that in itself is just a wild allegation, because what successful comedian has the time to even do that? Well, the way Brendan Schaub allegedly told Bobby Lee all of this is by hopping into a call with a fellow comedian, and Brendan, this fellow comedian, apparently ganged up on Bobby Lee, saying they were going to end his career. What is this, commentary in 2016? I haven't heard the phrase, "I'm going to end your career," since the whole Leafy and Keemstar drama back in 2016. But here's a brief clip where Brendan actually went on to Bobby Lee's podcast to discuss all of this.
You said that that you guys, my career was going to be over. That you guys have evidence, you know what I mean? That that I'm some Reddit mastermind. That you have files and proof that you can trace, you know, me from Reddit back to my house, the URL, you know,
IP address.
The IP address, and that I have been for 5 or 6 years have been coyly and you know, mischiefully, you know, contributing to threads that were
not contributing.
What?
Didn't you say it was, well, from what you had said, that we were responsible,
right?
But to be more specific, Brendan claims that he doesn't actually believe that Bobby is behind it. He just believes that someone on Bobby's team. Again, just very weird for a successful comedian to be behind. You would think that he has more than enough going on in his day to worry about a hate campaign on Brendan Schaub. Because let's be real here, Brendan does an amazing job at peddling his own hate campaign at himself.
He didn't say you particularly.
In the beginning you did, and as I defended myself and saying I don't own a computer, this and that, then you guys started going, oh, maybe it wasn't you. Well, it's somebody on your team.
Essentially, Brendan's claiming here that these Reddit posts trace back to someone at the Tigerbelly camp. And just to clarify, Tigerbelly is Bobby Lee's and Khalyla's podcasting company. So Brendan is essentially alleging that someone on their team is behind the hate campaign on him. But what's interesting here is all of these allegations from Brendan essentially come right after Khalyla made her own allegations back in January of this year on her own podcast. These allegations was that Brendan allegedly was hitting on her about 7 years ago. Brendan's name is never actually said here, but it's heavily implied that it is Brendan. But what I find odd here is that Khalyla initially said that this happened 3 years ago and not 7 years ago.
On New Year's Eve, while he was having dinner with his family, he was like, "What are you doing tonight?"
This year?
Maybe 3 years ago. He was like, "What are you doing tonight?" I was like, left him on red.
But
he was
he
like,
knows
I hate that I'm with my in-laws right now. Do you want to go? He did that to me.
That is like, he thinks you're going to be a partner in crime. Like for me, I was like single.
I'm just so traumatized by, even when you say his name, just like years of, and I still have the receipts, and one day I'm going to just submit it to Dumois.
So if this is true, very weird. I'm always amazed and baffled when guys do stupid stuff like this. I guess you could just say it's a certifiable thinking with your moment. Because dude has so much to lose and so little to gain. Let's be real here, just for a second. Is all of that, is it really worth losing your family, your friends, potentially your career to get a nut off? Like, really? I'm not much of a mathematician, but the math doesn't make sense. But apparently, Khalyla and Brendan have privately agreed that they were never going to talk about this in the public. That was until Brendan went on to the Flagrant 2 podcast, where he said this.
What's with the Trash Tuesday beef? When are we going to settle the Trash Tuesday beef?
It's settled as far as, you know.
Did you try to wog Annie Letterman to your truck?
No, it doesn't make sense. No. It doesn't make sense. No.
Okay, so then follow up. Why does it not make sense? Why does that make sense?
Yeah, that's not convincing at all.
Perspective.
For it to get back to me, it has to get out of control. I have nothing but love for her. You know,
Really?
I have no idea, you know, what her issue is, anything like that. That's fine. That's her narrative, and that's how she feels. All good. I get it.
Yeah.
As far as Khalyla goes, you know, me and her had a long conversation on the phone. Me and her are good, man.
Yeah.
No one's suing anybody.
That's what I needed to ask.
No. These narratives online, you know, it's a you know, it's like a soap show. They want this drama. There's no drama. Like Bobby Lee is one of my close friends. Me and Bobby talk all. No one's been more supportive when I started than Bobby Lee, dude.
Really?
Besides Rogan and Callan Delia, like nobody's been more supportive.
Yeah.
So when it comes to Khalyla, I didn't have her number, Bobby. I go, look, send me your girl's number. So I called her and we just had a conversation, for over an hour. Me and her are good, man. Dude, when you talk about the secret sauce, Khalyla is the secret sauce of Tigerbelly, of the Trash Tuesday. She's such a smart girl. No issues. As far as suing goes, I think it's a miscommunication.
And I guess this led Khalyla to feel like she could talk about it. So she talked about it on the H3 podcast.
So you guys said, this guy, Brendan Schwab, you alluded to it. You said his initials was BS. Everybody now knows it's him, right?
Well, the first time that we had talked, it was a story about someone who had hit on me 7 years ago. It was a story about but we never said his name during the first show.
You guys were together 7 years ago?
Yes, we've been together 9.
Okay.
But after all of this, people thought that Ethan from H3 was pushing her and Bobby way too much about this topic, where they clearly were not very comfortable talking about it. And honestly, I can see that point. I'm a little torn on it though, because they're on Ethan's podcast. His job is to make the podcast as entertaining as possible. So he is clearly going to want to push for that stuff.
A lot of his fans are just people from that world. They're like, Ethan pushed them. He blindsided them and all this. And I feel like I was really sensitive. I didn't push them at all. I really just listened. I feel like I really didn't push them at all. So I don't know. I mean, again, I wasn't trying to drama bait or anything. It wasn't even a big plan of the show. I barely mentioned it. I mean, here, the fact that all opened up like that came as a shock to me too. I mean,
but the whole Reddit and DM debacle, they kind of tie in together, because Bobby and Khalyla believe that Brendan only brought up this because of what Khalyla brought up on her podcast. But in regards to Brendan's proof, or the 300-page document he has claiming that someone from the Tigerbelly team is behind a hate campaign on him, well, he addressed it, but he didn't show any of the proof on the podcast. So here's Khalyla talking about what Brendan showed her off air.
The first time we've heard his name on this podcast ever. It's ever been brought up. Wow.
But can you tell us what happened?
I want to be super kind about this whole thing, because I think it did take a lot for him to sit in front of us. I got to tell you, probably one of the most boring episodes we've ever done. Only because it's there was hardly any laughs. It was so tense. It was very uncomfortable. And I was going in there thinking that he would just take responsibility for everything. But there was one piece of information that I felt I still have a big mistrust for him. So we have a long way to go.
Really? Even after you had him on?
Yeah, and we talked about it on the show. I think, I don't have any ill feeling towards him anymore, but there's still a lot of mistrust. And only because he's still not willing to admit that what we said on the show ultimately led to the whole spectacle that became the Reddit accusation. He's saying those are two different occurrences.
But Shaub allegedly had a whole bunch of information backing his claims.
So I also wanted to clarify for the audience that watched the Tigerbelly episode that Shaub said that he had 300 pages of evidence against us, but then it was never shown to us or our production team, even though I had continued to ask for it, right? But at the end of the show, he was like, I will show you after the show. But I'm like, well, my audience is not going to know what we've seen, so I'm putting this information on Trash Tuesday instead. What we saw was a very zoomed in photo of HTML codes, numbers, no context on a paper. And when you encircle something on your phone with red, it just said the company's email. And then he showed me another page, all HTML code, no context, completely zoomed in. And it said Robert Lee, which is not even Bobby's government name.
Okay, so I don't know if she's understating the evidence she received or if he just doesn't have evidence. But it just sounds so weird. Why would he say he has 300 pages of evidence that they're behind whatever hate campaigns on him if he doesn't have it? Something must be missing here, right?
I was supposed to update we were supposed to update the audience on Tigerbelly, but we forgot. But those are the two things that I saw, and I was like, Brendan, this is a joke. This is a Mickey Mouse. Someone could have just sent you this. My mom could have just photoshopped this. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. However, his team is now working with my production, because to me, when I saw it, I was like, with all due respect, Brendan, but this cannot be real. This is a joke. And he was like, well, so we're still working. I was not shown anything substantial or anything that would even match his accusation towards our company. So that's what I want to say out there.
So this is apparently the last time that Khalyla wants to talk about this. So unless Brendan comes out of the woodworks with his 300-page document proving that they are behind the harassment campaign on him, I don't think anything more is going to come from this story. But I guess we'll find out with time.